Every morning at 8:14, he got on at Canal Street, and every morning I reminded myself that staring was rude. I failed, consistently, to take my own advice. He was tall in the specific way that subway cars resented, always having to angle his shoulders, always aware of the space he took up. Dark jacket, dark eyes, a jaw that looked like someone had drawn it with a ruler and then thought, no, actually, let's make it worse. He read actual books. Paper ones. He'd underline sentences in pencil and then, in a move that made me want to stage an intervention, dog-ear the pages, as if he didn't own a single bookmark, as if he was the kind of man who just handled things carelessly and let them stay bent. I found it maddening. I thought about it at 11 p.m. for reasons I refused to examine. 6 weeks of this. 6 weeks of the same car, same corner, same careful architecture of not looking. I'd started leaving my apartment at 8:09 instead of 8:11. I told myself it was because I liked having a seat. I was an excellent liar when the audience was myself. Some mornings he'd look up at exactly the wrong moment, or the right one, and catch me not looking, and the corner of his mouth would do something that wasn't quite a smile but was somehow worse. A suggestion. A door left slightly open. I'd look back at my phone with the focused energy of a woman defusing a bomb, my pulse doing something embarrassing in my throat. I called him dog-ear in my head. It was not a romantic nickname. It was a survival mechanism. It was a Wednesday in March when the train shuddered, groaned like something put upon and ancient, and stopped. Not at a station. In the tunnel, in the dark, between Chambers and Fulton, the lights flickering down to a dim amber glow that turned everyone into shadows. The car swayed gently and then went still. A communal exhale moved through the passengers, that particular New York sound of people recalibrating their entire morning in real time. Then, from the far end of the car, a voice. Low and unhurried, threaded through with amusement. Okay. Nobody panic. I have half a granola bar and a book of crosswords. We're going to be fine. The laugh came out of me before I could catch it, a real one, unguarded, my hand flying up to cover my mouth half a second too late. Around me, a few other people smiled. Someone actually chuckled. And then a phone flashlight clicked on, cutting through the amber dark, and it was pointed at a crossword book. And then it tilted up, and dog-ear was looking directly at me. Not glancing. Not doing the polite subway thing of making accidental eye contact and immediately retreating. Looking. Like he'd been waiting for the lights to go out so he'd have an excuse. My heart did something athletic. Graticule, I said, because the crossword was open in his hands and I could see 7 across from where I was sitting and my mouth apparently had opinions about that. He blinked. What? 7 across. Cartographer's tool. Graticule. A beat of silence. In the dim light his expression shifted into something I couldn't fully read, surprise, and then interest, sharp and unguarded, like a window opening. He looked down at the crossword. Back up at me. How, he said, do you just know that? I make maps. I lifted one shoulder. It's my job. Technically I'm a GIS analyst, but I prefer mapmaker. It sounds like something a person would have carved on their door in 1740. He stared at me for a moment with an expression I would later describe as ambushed. Then he crossed the car, folded himself down onto the floor with the calm of a man entirely comfortable making unconventional choices, and held the crossword book out toward me. Marcus, he said. Dara. I sat down across from him. The floor was every bit as terrible as expected. I didn't care even slightly. Do you always introduce yourself to strangers on the floor of a broken subway? Only the ones who know words like graticule. His eyes held mine. It's a short list. He was funnier than I'd expected, which was dangerous. Funny was the thing that got past my defenses when charm alone bounced right off. He had an architect's way of looking at things, finding load-bearing details, noticing what held things up. And when he listened to me he did it with his whole attention, which was rarer than it should have been and far more distracting. We worked through the crossword. Our knees were 6 inches apart on the subway floor. 5. I wasn't measuring. I was absolutely measuring. 14 down, he said, tilting the book toward me. The flashlight caught the line of his jaw, the way he held his pencil loosely, like everything was provisional and negotiable. 8 letters. The thing that pulls you somewhere you hadn't planned to go. I looked at the clue. Then at him. He was already looking at me. That's not a crossword clue, I said. That's a sentence with no definition. I know. He didn't look away. I'm ad-libbing. The air between us shifted, tightened, like a held breath, and I was suddenly, acutely aware of how close we were sitting, of the warmth of him in the cool of the stalled car, of the fact that I had imagined this exact proximity approximately 40 times and the reality was considerably more overwhelming than the imagination. Gravity, I said quietly. 8 letters. Something moved through his expression. Not the careful, almost smile I knew from the platform. Something more open than that, and hungrier. That works, he said. The train had been broken for 23 minutes. I knew this because I'd checked my phone twice and retained nothing except the number, like a fever reading. Around us the car had settled into its own rhythms, a teenager with headphones, a woman doing a wordle, 2 men debating bodega coffee with the intensity of arbitration. Everyone in their own world. Marcus and me in ours. Can I ask you something? He said. You're going to either way. His mouth curved. How long have you been getting on at Canal Street? I went very still. Why? Because I've seen you before. He said it simply, without apology, holding my gaze like it was perfectly normal to admit. A lot of befores, actually. My pulse was doing something I'd file under medical concern if I were being honest. I could say the same thing, I said, because I'd never been good at pretending, not when someone looked at me like that. Like I was a sentence he'd been trying to finish for weeks. The air between us was very warm and very still. So we've just been. Yes. For how long? 6 weeks, I said. Then, because I was apparently committed now, I started leaving earlier. To get a seat. I paused. There are always seats. He laughed, low, real, surprised, and leaned his head back against the door, looking at me with something that made the fluorescent amber dark feel considerably warmer. I moved cars 3 weeks ago, he said. I used to ride in the front. I switched to this one because, he stopped. The smile stayed. Because why, I said, even though I knew. I wanted to hear it. You know why. I did. And the knowing of it sat low and warm in my chest like the first sip of something good, and I let myself look at him, really look, without the usual performance of not looking, and he looked back, and neither of us said anything for a moment because some things don't need to be said so much as simply allowed to exist. The lights came back full and bright, and the train lurched forward, and 31 minutes of stolen underground time collapsed back into ordinary Wednesday morning. Everyone stood. Bags were gathered. Phones reappeared. The car filled with the sound of the city resuming. We stood too. Closer than strangers, not quite as close as I wanted, which was information I was still processing. The train pulled into Fulton Street and the doors opened and the crowd moved and somehow, on the platform, we were standing still while the world moved around us. Marcus turned to me. His hand came up, slowly, telegraphing every inch, and tucked a strand of hair back from my face, his knuckles just barely grazing my cheekbone. It was a small thing. It was an enormous thing. I stopped breathing for the duration of it. Coffee, he said. His voice was lower than it had been on the train. The card on Worth Street. Right now, before either of us comes to our senses. I have a 9 o'clock. I have an 8:30. He didn't move. I don't care even a little bit. Do you? I looked up at him, at the jaw I'd been studying for 6 weeks, the eyes that had been catching me not looking and letting me get away with it, and felt the particular recklessness of someone who has been careful for a very long time and has abruptly decided not to be. "I know that cart," I said. "They have Florentines." His smile arrived slow and warm and slightly devastating. "Yeah, they do." I fell into step beside him, up the stairs, out into the cold bright particular light of a March morning in New York, and when his hand found the small of my back, light, questioning, I leaned into it instead of away, and felt him exhale like he'd been holding something for 6 weeks and had finally been allowed to put it down. My phone buzzed on the walk over. I didn't check it until we were seated, fingers wrapped around warm cups, his knee pressed against mine under a too-small table. A calendar notification, 9 a.m., weekly sync. I declined it without looking up from his eyes. He noticed. "Anything important?" "Nothing," I said, "that can't wait."